very late on the night of November 25, 1925, amidst the pall of gloom and deep mourning for the beloved monarch, His Majesty King Prajadhipok, who passed away only minutes previously, His Royal Highness Prince Prajadhipok Sakdidet Gromaluang Sukhothai Thamaraja, the king's youngest brother and the youngest son of King Chulalongkorn and Queen Sawabha Phongse, made a most momentous decision of his life to assume the great burden of the realm, in fulfillment of the privileges and duties that fatefully befell him at the time. The phrase, to assume the great burden of the realm, definitely is not an overstatement, as if one were to look back on the prevailing situation of the country at the time of His Majesty's assumption of the crown, the world's economy was on the downward movement, and practically all monarchies were declining in popularity. World War I had just ended a few years back, and the economic condition called deflation, the opposite of inflation, was threatening the economy of every country and worsening relentlessly all the time, while the wave of pro-democracy as a trend of modern-day government regime was spreading rapidly. Some countries experienced a traumatic sudden change from the old regime into a new one, bringing in its wake a depressing trail of complications and disasters to the country. Many people were in grave doubt as to how Siam was going to overcome all the looming difficulties. Personally, King Prajadhipok ought to have distanced himself as far as possible from the throne, compared to the other sons of King Chulalongkorn. One good reason was that he was the king's youngest son, and had several elder brothers who stood in line for the throne before him. Further, he did not always have the best of health. For this reason, he had not, since his earliest days, been groomed to succeed to the throne. But as fate and luck would have it, toward the end of the 6th reign, he was designated as heir to the throne in accordance with the newly amended 1924 Palatine Law on Succession. Administration. As mentioned before, the world and Siam at the time were having the deflationary trouble as the national revenue greatly dwindled. As head of the government, he had had to make drastic cuts in national expenses by demolishing departments and laying off government employees. Even the king himself had to reduce his privy purse, the first time ever in the history of the country, by a third of the amount he had been entitled to. Such mammoth construction projects to improve public infrastructure as the Prajadhipok Memorial Bridge to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the capital got their kickstart from the king, who had to fork out a sizable sum out of the privy purse. In short, the king resorted to every means available to keep the country's economic and financial ship afloat in the sea of trouble without sinking. Retrenchment was the order of the day during those early days of the reign. Country, he envisioned a scheme to give gradual franchise to his people as some sort of training in administration at local levels by urging the enactment of the Municipality Act. At the national level, he appointed experts to make the first constitution draft for his consideration. Already, he had given a press interview in America on his intentions to grant a constitution to the Siamese people one day. Would not have escaped a potentially divisive civil war, not to mention other possible unthinkable consequences. With a sense of compassion and his firm faith in democracy, King Prajadhipok made a decision to give up his previously enjoyed royal privileges and consented to become the country's first constitutional monarch. He duly granted the permanent constitution to the Siamese populace on December 10, 1932. It is unfortunate that after the revolution, the politics of Siam was very volatile, perhaps due to the fact that democracy was still a novelty for the country and its politicians. The post-revolution situation was marred by rows due to differences of opinion, suspicion, and, most unfortunately, occasional armed conflicts. King Prajadhipok, a true democrat, made his case strongly in his abdication letter. I am willing to surrender my former power to the general people, but I refuse to surrender my power to any particular individual or party so that that power can be used in an autocratic way without listening to the true voice of the people. With pathos, the king resolutely announced his decision on abdication and voiced his final frustrations to end the historic abdication letter. I deeply regret that I am no longer able to render benefits to my people and country, just as I have set my heart and hope in order to fulfill the traditional expectations bequeathed to me by my ancestors. Lastly, I pray that Siam shall continue to prosper, and the people of Siam shall have happiness and fulfillment. after his abdication, King Prajadhipok and Queen Rampai Pani chose to settle quietly in Britain. On May 30, 1941, King Prajadhipok died in his little mansion in Britain. He is the only Thai king to have died in exile on foreign soil. Thus ended the life of Thailand's greatest democrat and the most unforgettable chapter of the reign of Prajadhipok, one of the shortest reigns of the dynasty, yet one filled with dignity, magnanimity, and historical significance.